We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. Aristotle. What's up, guys? In this video, you're going to see me greasing the groove. The hell is greasing the groove, you might think? Greasing the groove is a type of training protocol which calls for repeated submaximal sets throughout the day using weight that is essentially easy. Weight that you could probably do 10 reps, but you only do 3 or 5. Enough repetitions to elicit a central nervous system response, but not elicit a metabolic response. What does all that mean? Well, essentially means you're practicing without going into failure, without going to exhaustion. Now, why the hell would you do that? Isn't muscle tearing, lactic acid good for us? And this type of training, you're not going to get any of that. Well, that was my thinking for a very long time until I stumbled upon work of a dude called Pavel Tsatsouline, a Russian fella, who basically came up with this idea. I wouldn't say he came up with it, but he introduced it to the West, or at least to me. He probably is most known for introducing the kettlebell to the West or to the States. Now, he's one of the biggest voices for this type of training. By the way, this type of training, if you typed in "grease the groove" into Google, you will get a big explanation of what the hell this is. Well, this is the guy behind the idea of greasing the groove. And it goes back to what I was saying before. You practice a movement over and over again throughout the entirety of the day, with plenty enough rest in between each practice session, that when you do those sets, you are fully fresh and you execute the movement with absolute perfection and without causing metabolic fatigue, meaning that you don't get tired, you don't go to failure, essentially. Now, this type of training is not going to get you jacked. You're not going to put on shit ton of muscle. But what this type of training will do is make you proficient in the movement that you choose to do this training with. So in my case, I decided to focus on the deadlift. That's my primal movement in this protocol. But what I've done on top of that is I've added a couple more exercises to kind of combat some of the muscular imbalances that would result from just repeatedly doing one exercise over and over again. With deadlift being primarily a hip extension exercise, I thought I would throw in some knee raises to introduce a bit of knee or hip flexion and just provide the balance in my development. And then I threw in a bit of rowing for a bit of scapular retraction, which essentially is the reverse of what the deadlift does. The deadlift, you kind of, rounds your shoulders and whatnot, even though I try not to do that when I deadlift. It's, you become more and more rounded in the shoulders if you just continue to assume that position over and over again every day. And then I just threw also some some pull-ups as well, because I feel like lat hypertrophy or lat strength is critical when it comes to deadlifting. Shoulder depression, and I feel like it's a very good movement to have in anybody's training regimen. So how do you start doing this? I guess the next question is, if for your own self, how would you get involved? Well, basically, you would pick one movement, at tops 2. Although I started with one movement. I started with pull-ups, and I would do 30 to 60% of my maximum repetitions. I would recommend 30%. So if you are able to do 10 pull-ups, you would do 3 pull-ups in this protocol, and you would do it throughout the day. So 3 pull-ups an hour, 3 pull-ups in an hour, 3 pull-ups in an hour, just whenever you're fully rested. And what the research shows, and what Pavel says is that if you test in a month or two, you're going to be surprised at the strength gains. And I can tell you firsthand that my experience with this type of training is absolutely phenomenal. This type of training resonates with me because it kind of it just makes sense scientifically. I always think about the farmer strength, as people call it. You know, people doing labor work day in, day out. They're bloody strong people. They're absolute savages. We have a guy here locally who is a butcher, and the guy's maybe 6'4", 6'5". He's a big guy and he weighs about probably 100, 110 kilos. But when we go and get meat from him, I often see him throwing weight around that shop like it's nobody's business, and he's holding 20, 30 kilos, and he would just pick it up with one hand and just make nothing of it. And so for years I'd see that and I'd think to myself, how the hell is this guy so strong? He doesn't look like he trains, doesn't look like he does anything. But it's that exposure to repetitive movements, repetitive heavy lifting without fatigue. So his central nervous system is just unbelievably efficient at moving weight around because he does that every single day. And so I came across Pavel Tsatsouline, and then I thought about the butcher, and I thought about all the people in my life that I've had exposure to who have done hard labor for a living, and how strong they were. And here I was, training for 4 or 5 years, all the smart things, the protocols, the cardio, all the compound movements, and I felt like, my God, am I just genetically, inferior? What's going on? How come these people are not training at all and they appear to be stronger than me? And so, yeah, this type of training is at least should be tried. It's not mainstream, but I feel like it should be. I feel like this is the way natural people should train. This idea that you should absolutely kill yourself, go to failure on each muscle group once a week, is just ludicrous to me. It just never made sense to me. I followed it because I didn't know better, but scientifically speaking, it makes no sense to me. How does stimulus one time a week produce strength long term? If you were to go and kick a ball once a week, would that make you Ronaldo or Messi? No. You would kick the ball every single day, multiple times a day, to get good at anything. So and that's another little point to remember. Pavel says that you should treat strength as a skill and not as a muscular expression, not as a expression of your muscles. What he tries to teach is that strength is an expression of the central nervous system. It's your ability to recruit muscle efficiently. So if you are deadlifting once a week, you're not going to be a efficient mover or proficient mover of that movement. If you practice something over and over again, your body becomes accustomed to it. You develop motor neuron patterns, and the movement becomes secondhand to you. It becomes familiar, and through that you become efficient and stronger. We all know in the Olympic weightlifting, there are guys there that are just so filthy strong at such a light weight. I mean, these guys are absolute savages. 70, 80 kilo lifters they're squatting 300 kilos. That's astonishing power to weight ratio. I mean, that is insanity. And what Pavel says is that in all of his years of research, he has found that some of the most successful programs around the world call for sub-maximal frequent sessions. So the Russians, the Bulgarians, the Chinese, these guys don't hit a heavy, they don't go to maximum weight every single training session. No, they do 60%, 50 to 60% weight most of the time. Only 5% of their training time is spent handling heavy ass weight. The rest of the time is just practice, man. These people are just going through the damn motions, and they're getting filthy strong. And here I was for many years thinking that to get stronger, you got to lift heavy ass shit all the time. All you're going to get out of that is injuries, aches and pains. Joints are going to fall apart, and you're not really going to get that strong unless you're supplementing with the good stuff. If you're shooting steroids up your veins into the muscle or whatever the hell it's taken. That's how you're going to make that a training efficient. And yes, you can argue some of these weightlifters in the history have also used drugs. The kind of argument to that is, well, the West was also using drugs, using the other type of protocol, and how come they were being outlifted? How come these guys were, in the East, these guys were killing everyone, getting all the medals and everything? So, to me, I think it's at least worth a try. If you've been training, 3 times a week, squatting once, twice a week or whatever, just give this a shot. If you want to increase your squat or deadlift or whatever the movement you might be interested in, just try picking a weight that you can do 10 times and do 3 times many times a day and see how you go. I guarantee you, as my experience has shown, that you're going to get stronger. And Pavel Titulin has a big record of getting people stronger using this protocol. In fact, he mentioned a interesting story about his own father, who he got doing this protocol at the age of 70, 72 or something like that. And the guy has gotten so much stronger in the pull-ups purely by using this protocol. So what Pavel had him do was essentially do a couple of pull-ups every time he would go into the basement or the garage. I can't remember exactly where, but he had this pull-up bar in his basement, and then the rule was that every time he walked into the shed or the basement, he would do 2 or 3 pull-ups. And so, this old fella would go into the basement 10 times a day, so that he would do 30 pull-ups every single day. And now the guy can do 30 pull-ups, and this is a 70-year-old man. And this is a man that was in the military as well as a young fella, and he could never do more than 20 pull-ups as a young man. And now he's in his 70s, mid-70s, and he can bloody do 30 pull-ups. I mean, that to me is absolutely ridiculous, and it goes to show the success of this protocol. So if you're interested in strength alone, give this a shot. I'll be very surprised if you don't have a positive experience with it. I have had very good results so far, and yeah, I feel like the message should be spread, which is one of the reasons I decided to make this video. When I first started looking up Grease the Groove, there was only a few videos that popped up on YouTube, and no one really kind of, except a few videos, no one really talked about it in the same light that I'm speaking about it. I feel like it's an amazing protocol to follow. Give it a shot, guys.